The ER doors slide open without a sound anyone notices at first. Then the shouting hits fast, close, wrong. A massive man staggers in with blood on his hands that is not all his. His eyes scan the room like he is counting exits, counting people, deciding which one to break first. A security guard steps toward him and hesitates. Near the triage desk, a student nurse looks up from a clipboard. No badge that matters. No authority in her posture. Just quiet, tired eyes. The man lunges anyway, toward the desk, toward the staff, toward the patients who cannot run. And in one controlled movement, the student nurse steps into his path. Not panicked, not loud, not brave. Precise. The room thinks she is about to get hurt. They are wrong. The fluorescent lights did not flicker. They never did when it mattered. They held steady above the ER like a promise nobody believed anymore. Monitors beeped in uneven rhythms. A curtain rattled as someone inside Bay 3 coughed hard enough to shake it. The air smelled of antiseptic, old coffee, and something metallic that clung to the back of the throat. At the triage desk, the line kept reforming no matter how often it was broken. People shifted their weight, stared past the glass doors, watched the nurses the way drowning people watch a shoreline. Mara kept her shoulders low as she moved, clipboard tucked flat against her ribs so it would not snag on anyone. Her badge swung once when she turned, student nurse in large block letters, the kind of label that made people speak around her instead of to her. Vitals first, her preceptor, Nurse Calder, said without looking up from the screen. Calder's voice was calm in the way exhaustion could be calm. You do not decide who goes back. You bring me numbers. Mara nodded. Yes. She did not argue. She never argued in a place like this. Arguing made noise, and noise made people notice you for the wrong reasons. She stepped to the first chair. A man in his late 60s sat hunched forward, hands clenched on his knees, eyes unfocused like he was searching for a doorway that was no longer there. His wife hovered behind him, one hand on his shoulder, the other gripping a folder of papers so tightly the edges curled. Sir, Mara said softly, keeping her tone even, can I get your name? He blinked at her, as if he had not heard language in a while. The wife answered for him. He has dementia. He wandered. We found him outside. He is not himself. Mara's gaze flicked, not to his face first, but to his hands. No tremor, no obvious injury. She watched the way his fingers flexed, slow, deliberate, like he was trying to remember how to be human. She slid the cuff around his arm and pumped, listening to the hiss, the thump again. Calder called from the desk, impatience wearing a professional mask. Mara, coming, Mara said, then finished the reading. Blood pressure high, pulse high, temperature slightly elevated. She did not announce it dramatically. She wrote it down, clean and simple, and angled herself so the man's wife could see her face. You did the right thing bringing him, Mara said. He is safe here. The wife's eyes filled in a way that embarrassed her. Thank you. Mara did not smile. Smiling could feel like a promise. She only nodded once, small, then stepped away. Behind her, a child wheezed in sharp, thin pulls of air. The sound cut through the ER like a blade because it was so familiar to anyone who worked nights. Mara moved toward the sound automatically, but Calder intercepted her with a palm raised like a barrier. Student, Calder said, not unkindly. Just factual. Stay in your lane. Mara stopped. Her hand stayed loose at her sides. She looked past Calder anyway. The child was 8 or 9, sitting upright on a gurney, shoulders lifted, lips slightly blue. A mother leaned over him, begging him to breathe as if breath could be negotiated. Respiratory therapy was on the way. That was what the board said. But boards were optimistic. Reality was always 2 minutes slower than the board. Mara watched the child's chest, counted, listened for the tiny gaps between the wheezes that meant the air was still moving, barely. Then she turned away because she was told to, not because she did not care, because in an ER, care had to fit inside the system, or it became chaos. She returned to the triage desk, placed the vitals in Calder's line of sight without pushing them into her hands. Calder glanced down. Okay, next. Mara went. A drunk with a split lip who insisted he was fine. A woman clutching her abdomen, pupils wide, pain held behind her teeth. A teenager who would not meet anyone's eyes and kept checking the doors as if expecting someone to come through them. With each patient, Mara did what she was asked. Numbers, brief questions, minimal contact. She was efficient enough to be useful and quiet enough to be ignored. That was the trick of survival in a crowded room. But even while she worked, her attention kept doing something else, something separate from the clipboard. She noted where the nearest oxygen tanks were stored. Not because oxygen mattered right now, but because tanks were heavy and they were metal and they could become obstacles in the wrong hands. She noted which security guard had his radio clipped high and which one had it buried under his jacket like he did not want to use it. She noted the automatic doors, how long they stayed open, how often they stuck for half a second when two people tried to pass at once. She noted the exit sign above the hall that led to imaging. Not because she planned to leave, because you did not look for exits only when you needed them. Calder leaned closer to her, voice lowered. You were staring again. Mara looked down at the chart, as if it had demanded her full attention. Saw the... Calder sighed. Just do not overthink. It is a hospital, not a war zone. Mara did not react to the word. Her face remained neutral, her posture respectful. Yes, she said, but her eyes drifted briefly to the glass doors. Outside, the night pressed against the entrance like a living thing. People moved past the parking lot lights in quick silhouettes. Too fast to identify, too close to each other. A distant sound carried in when the doors opened for a paramedic wheeling an empty gurney out. Not sirens. Not yet. Something like shouting, far away, swallowed by the building before it could become a warning. Mara wrote one last set of vitals. Her pen did not shake. On her badge, the word student caught the light. And nobody in that room looked at her twice. They thought she was learning how to be here. Mara watched the doors and waited, without moving, for the moment the ER would stop being routine. For the moment someone would make a mistake. For the moment she would have to correct it, quietly. The ER did not announce danger. It never did. It came in through small failures first. A printer jammed at the triage desk. The label spool tore, forcing Calder to peel stickers off by hand. 2 bays down, a nurse argued quietly with pharmacy on the phone, voice tight with contained anger, as if the right medication might arrive faster if she sounded more certain. Mara moved between people like she belonged to the furniture, present, necessary, unnoticed. A paramedic pushed through the automatic doors with a patient on a stretcher. The doors stayed open a fraction too long after they cleared, as if the building was hesitating to shut the night back out. Mara's eyes flicked to the gap, then to the parking lot beyond the glass. A cluster of figures near the curb, one of them bending forward, hands on knees, breathing hard, another pacing in circles. She did not stare. Staring invited questions. The paramedic's radio squawked once, brief, distorted, before he clicked it off as he rolled. Calder leaned toward the station computer. We are already holding 12 in the hallway, she muttered. Not to Mara. To the screen. We cannot take another ambulance. The paramedic did not slow. You will. He said like a fact. Like he'd said it in every ER in the city. Like the building itself would swallow anything that crossed the threshold, whether it could digest it or not. Mara caught the edge of his words. Any heads up? The paramedic looked at her badge and answered Calder instead. There is a disturbance 2 blocks over. Somebody tore up a convenience store. Police are trying to contain it. Calder's fingers paused over the keyboard. Weapons. Unknown, he said. One male, big. Maybe on something. Maybe just angry. Maybe. Mara watched his face as he said it. Watch what he did not say. Paramedics learned early how to file fear away. But his jaw was set like he had bitten down too hard. Thanks, Calder said. Then to Mara, as if dismissing the entire world outside the ER doors, get back to the line. We are drowning. Mara returned to the waiting area. A man stood up too fast and swayed. A woman held her phone out at chest height, filming the triage desk without speaking. A teen near the wall kept glancing toward the entrance, eyes sharp, shoulders pinned back, as if ready to sprint. Mara moved closer to the teen with a small, careful angle, non-threatening, respectful. She did not crowd him. "Are you waiting to be seen?" she asked. He shook his head quickly. No, his gaze slid past her, toward the doors. "I'm just waiting for someone," Mara asked quietly. He swallowed. "He is out there." "Who is?" She kept her voice low, simple. The teen's lips parted. Then he closed them again, like the name itself was dangerous to release. "Big guy. He hit my friend. He is not right." Mara noted the wording. Not right. Not drunk. Not just violent. Something else. "Did you call the police?" she asked. "They came," the teen said. He ran. Mara let one beat of silence settle. "If he comes in here, you come behind the desk," she said, as if it was just a normal instruction. "You stay with staff. Understand?" The teen stared at her badge, then back to her face, uncertainty mixing with relief. "Okay," he said. Mara turned away before gratitude could become a scene. At triage, Calder was arguing with a charge nurse about beds. Security stood nearby, both guards in identical dark uniforms. Both with the same tired posture of men who had learned their presence did not stop much. Mara approached the nearest guard, the one with his radio clipped correctly, visible. "Ready. Can I ask you something?" Mara said. He glanced down at her badge and smiled with half his mouth. "You can ask." "Do the doors lock from your end?" she asked. "The automatic ones." He frowned. "Not from here. Only administration has that override." "Who is on tonight?" she asked. He blinked, surprised by the specific question. "Admin?" "No idea." Mara nodded once, as if she had expected that answer. "Okay." The guard shifted. "Why?" Mara chose the simplest truth. "Because if someone runs in here, we're the last room between them and the people who cannot move." He stopped smiling. Before he could respond, Calder snapped, "Mara, we do not have time for this." Mara stepped back immediately. "Yes." But she did not let it go. She moved toward the hallway that led to the patient bays and looked for small fixes. Things no one would notice until they mattered. A wheelchair left unattended near the entrance to imaging. She rolled it against the wall, out of the main path, where it would not become a stumbling block. A supply cart half blocking the corridor. She nudged it fully against the rail, locked the wheels with a soft click. A frail older woman on oxygen sitting nearest the glass doors, face pale, hands shaking around her purse strap. Mara crouched slightly to meet her eyes. "Ma'am," she said, gentle, "let's move you a little closer to the wall. It will be quieter." The woman's eyes darted to the entrance. "Is something happening?" Mara did not lie. She also did not feed panic. "We're just busy," she said. "I want you safe and comfortable." She guided the chair, slow and steady, placing the woman beside a column where the line of sight to the doors was broken. Less visual stress, more protection. Calder watched her do it and shook her head. "You are always rearranging people." Mara returned to the desk, posture neutral. "It makes it easier to move the gurneys through." Calder accepted the explanation because it fit the ER's language. Efficiency, flow, throughput. Not safety, not threat. The ambulance radio squawked again, louder this time, because someone had forgotten to turn the volume down. Male, large, aggressive, heading toward. A hand slapped the radio silent. The waiting room did not react. They were too busy being sick and scared in ordinary ways. But Mara felt the air change anyway, the way you could feel a storm before the first drop hit. She stood at the triage desk with her clipboard, looking exactly like what they thought she was, a student, an extra, a pair of hands. Her face was calm. Her breathing was low. Her eyes stayed on the glass doors, counting the seconds they opened and closed, measuring the world outside by what little it allowed her to see. Something was coming, and the ER, with its thin security and crowded hallways, would have to absorb it. Mara did not reach for a weapon. She did not call for backup. She did what she could do without permission. She positioned people. She cleared lanes. She waited. The automatic doors opened for a woman with a limp and a plastic bag of ice pressed to her cheek. They closed behind her with their usual soft seal, as if the building had swallowed her and moved on. Mara watched the doors anyway. In the waiting room, the line at triage thinned and thickened like a breathing thing. Someone complained about the wait. Someone else coughed wetly into a sleeve. A baby cried, then stopped, then started again with renewed anger. Calder's voice cut through it, measured and tired. Next, name and date of birth. Mara stood half a step behind her, ready to take vitals, ready to fetch, ready to be invisible. The doors opened again. This time nobody spoke. The man who came through filled the frame like a moving wall. He was tall and heavy, shoulders wide enough that the door panels hesitated around him. His shirt was dark with sweat and streaked with blood. Not a clean smear from his own injury. This was messy, uneven, as if his hands had been on someone else, and he had not cared to wipe them. His breathing was loud, not the labored breath of illness, the harsh breath of exertion. He paused just inside the entrance and turned his head slowly, scanning the room. Not looking for help, assessing. Mara felt the change go through the ER like a current. People registered it without understanding it. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. A man in the corner lowered his phone. A nurse at Bay 4 froze with a blood pressure cuff half-wrapped. The security guard nearest the doors straightened from his leaning posture. He took one step forward, then checked himself, as if his body remembered consequences. "Sir," the guard said. His voice was firm but not loud. "Can I help you?" The man's eyes slid to him, flat, irritated, like the guard was a door that did not open fast enough. He did not answer. He took 2 more steps into the waiting room, boots leaving faint prints on the clean floor. His hands hung loose at his sides, fingers flexing and relaxing, flexing and relaxing. His right knuckles were split. His left palm glistened. Calder did not move from the desk. She stayed where policy and habit kept her, but her voice shifted, higher, tighter. "Sir," she said, forcing a clinical tone into a moment that was not clinical. "If you are here for treatment, I need you to." The man's head snapped toward her, too fast for his eyes. For one instant, the ER was silent enough that Mara could hear the fluorescent hum again. Then the man barked a sound, not a word, not a sentence. A short, violent exhale that might have been laughter if it did not carry so much contempt. He walked directly toward the triage desk. The guard moved in front of him, hands out, palms open in the universal sign for stop. "Sir, you need to slow down." The man's gaze dropped to the guard's hands as if they offended him. His shoulders rolled once, loosening. The guard's stance widened. His radio crackled as his fingers brushed it, uncertain. Mara watched the space between them, watched the angle of the man's hips, watched his hands. She did not look at his face. Faces lit. Hands told the truth. The man's eyes flicked past the guard to the desk, to the computers, to the nurses, to the small gap behind. Triage where staff moved in and out. He was not just angry. He was deciding where to push. Behind him, in the doorway, a second security guard appeared, slower, already reaching for his radio. "Calder," that guard called. "Do you want us to just keep him calm?" Calder said, still trying to make the moment fit inside protocol. Mara saw something else, the crowd. People were rising from chairs, some backing away, some too stunned to move. A frail man with a walker stood directly in the line the big man was walking. Mara stepped sideways without drawing attention. She placed herself where she could move in any direction, where she could see the entrance, the triage desk, and the hallway leading deeper into the ER. The big man took another step. His shoulder clipped the frail man's walker. Metal scraped. The frail man stumbled. A small gasp ran through the waiting room. The big man did not look back. He did not apologize. He did not even register it. Mara moved, quick but controlled. She caught the walker with one hand, guided the frail man's elbow with the other, and eased him back into his chair. Her touch was firm, not tender, support and placement, not comfort. "Stay seated," she said quietly, as if she were telling him to conserve energy for a blood draw. The frail man's eyes were wide. He nodded. Mara let go and turned back to the threat. The guard at the front had raised his voice. "Sir, stop right there." The big man stopped. For a heartbeat, it looked like compliance. Then his chin lifted slightly and his gaze moved, not to the guard anymore, to the people behind him, to the triage desk, to the staff. He seemed to lock on Calder, on the desk, on the barrier between him and whatever he wanted. Mara saw the micro shift in his posture. Weight moving forward. A slight dip of the shoulder. A prelude. She did not call out. She did not shout warning words that would add panic to a room already brittle. She moved one step closer to triage, aligning herself with the narrow lane the man would take if he surged. Calder finally reached for her phone under the desk, fingers shaking as she tried to unlock it. The man's mouth opened. A string of words came out, ragged, disjointed, not loud enough to be a speech, but loud enough to poison the air. "Where is he?" he said, like an accusation. "Where is he?" The guard frowned. "Who?" The big man's eyes flashed. He took one step, then another, faster, ignoring the guard entirely. The guard's hands touched his chest, an instinctive stop. The big man swatted the hands away like they were nothing. The waiting room broke into motion. A woman screamed. A child started crying hard. Mara watched the guard's face, shock at the sheer strength, the sudden realization of mismatch. The big man surged toward triage, not stumbling, not flailing, a straight line of intent. Mara stepped into that line, not in a dramatic stance, not squared up like a fighter, just there, between him and the desk, close enough that he had to register her. To everyone else, she looked like the smallest, most breakable person in the room, wearing the least important badge. The big man's eyes snapped to her. He did not slow. He did not even seem to understand why she was in his way. Mara's hand stayed low, palms open, empty. Her voice was quiet, almost conversational. "Stop." It was not a plea. It was a measured instruction, the way you would speak to a patient about to pull out in 4. The big man's nostrils flared. His shoulders rose. And in that tight space, with nowhere to run and too many bodies behind her, Mara made a choice that would not look like heroism. It would look like procedure. A single controlled movement, timed to the exact moment he committed his weight forward. The ER held its breath. Mara did not raise her voice. In the half-second before contact, the ER narrowed to geometry. The distance from the attacker's shoulder to the triage counter, the angle of his right hip, the open lane behind her where staff would scatter if panic broke clean. He was too big to stop with force. Force would only turn him into a storm. So she did not meet him like a fight. She met him like a fall you control. "Stop," she said again, the same quiet tone, because changing tone would signal fear. The man's eyes were bloodshot and fixed. His breath came hot and wet. He did not even look at her badge now. He saw only obstruction. His right arm came up. Not a punch, not yet. More like a shove meant to clear her from the lane. A blunt, impatient sweep. Mara stepped in, not back. Her left hand met his forearm at the wrist, not grabbing, guiding, redirecting. Her right hand touched high on his upper arm near the triceps, where leverage lived and strength mattered less. She turned her body sideways, letting his momentum pass her center line. She moved like she had done it before in narrow places with hard floors. The attacker's shove became a stumble, not because she overpowered him, but because she stole the straight line he needed. His weight shifted forward. Mara's foot slid behind his lead foot, heel to heel, a quiet block. Not a trip in the crude sense. A barrier placed exactly where his next step wanted to go. He tried to plant. There was no ground where he expected it. His mask tipped. The waiting room made a collective sound, sharp, involuntary, like air leaving lungs. Mara stayed attached to his arm, close enough that she could feel the muscles firing, the panic rising inside him as his balance failed. She kept his wrist turned slightly inward, just enough to prevent him from swinging at random on the way down. She lowered with him, controlling the descent so his head did not snap against the tile. He hit the floor on his side with a heavy thud that shook the base of the triage desk. And then, immediately, before anyone could rush in and turn it into violence, Mara transitioned. Her knee pinned his upper arm gently, not grinding, just anchoring. Her forearm pressed across his shoulder line, not his throat. She kept his face clear. Airway first. Always. The man bucked once, furious. Mara let the buck spin itself into the floor. Her voice stayed low, close enough that only he could hear it. "Breathe." He spat a word that did not form properly. His jaw clenched like he wanted a bite. Mara adjusted her position by inches. Her weight shifted to her hips. Her hand stayed calm. Calder's chair screeched as she stood. Mara, security, finally moved, boots pounding in, too fast, too late. The first guard dropped to a knee beside them and reached for the man's other arm. "Don't," Mara said, not loud, but sharp enough to cut. The guard froze, surprised that the student had spoken like that. Mara's eyes flicked to his hands. "Not his shoulder. You'll tear it. Wrist and forearm. Control the joint, not the muscle." The guard blinked. "What?" Mara did not repeat herself. She demonstrated. Her grip was firm but clinical, her hold designed to limit motion without causing injury. The man's arm was trapped by leverage, not pain. The second guard arrived and reached instinctively for the attacker's neck. Mara's voice hardened by 1 degree. "No pressure on the neck. Back up." The second guard hesitated. His eyes searched her face, looking for permission he did not expect to need from a student nurse. Behind them, the waiting room erupted into overlapping noise. Someone crying, someone shouting, "Call the cops," someone pleading, "Please don't hurt him," as if the only 2 options were mercy or brutality. Mara ignored the crowd. The attacker's breathing became ragged. His chest rose too fast. His eyes rolled briefly, then snapped back, scanning again like an animal caught in a trap. Mara saw it. Not just anger, panic. A chemical edge, a body on the verge of doing something irrational because it could not find a way out. If he panicked fully, he would thrash. Someone would jump on him. A knee would land in the wrong place. A rib would crack. A lawsuit, an arrest, a death. The ER would become a scene. Mara leaned closer to his ear. "Listen," she said, calm as a vitals check. "You are not going to stand up right now. Your breathing is too fast. You're going to pass out if you keep fighting." He tried to twist. Mara followed the motion without resisting it directly, keeping the joint angle stable, preventing the sudden torque that would force a violent response from security. Calder hovered at the edge, phone in hand, face pale. "What are you doing?" Mara did not look up. "Keeping him alive." The words landed wrong in the air. Too precise, too certain. The attacker's fingers clawed at the floor. His nails scraped tile. He was strong enough to make strength matter, but he was also unbalanced, lungs burning, blood pressure surging. He had brought his body to the edge and did not know how to come back. Mara made a decision with no drama. She loosened her hold by a fraction, not enough for escape, enough to reduce the feeling of being trapped. The man's eyes flicked to the slight slack. "Good," she said, as if rewarding a patient for not pulling at a catheter. "Stay there." The first guard whispered, "Do you need cuffs?" Mara kept her gaze on the attacker's hands. "Not yet. If you cuff him while he's in a surge, he'll fight harder. We wait 10 seconds. The guard stared at her. 10 seconds. "Count," Mara said. The guard did, under his breath, like a man being forced to trust a stranger with a badge that said student. 1, 2, 3. The attacker's bucking slowed. Not because he became calm, but because his body had spent the first wave of adrenaline with nowhere to put it. 4, 5. Mara felt the tremor in his arm begin to change from rage to fatigue. 6, 7. His breathing was still fast, but less explosive. 8, 9. Mara spoke again, still quiet. "Now." The guard moved in at the wrists, exactly where she indicated. The second guard mirrored him. Together they secured the attacker's arms in a controlled position without yanking, without piling on. Mara shifted her knee away from the joint line, so no one could accuse her of crushing him. She kept one hand near his shoulder, ready to stabilize if he spasmed. In the sudden hush, you could hear the monitors again. The distant cough. The hum. Calder stared down at Mara like she was seeing her for the first time. You did that without hitting him." Mara finally looked up. Her expression was flat with concentration, not pride. "Do not crowd him," she said to the guards. "Give him air. Give me a pulse ox. And someone bring a blood pressure cuff." One of the guards hesitated, as if waiting for Calder to overrule. Calder did not, because the man was on the floor, restrained, breathing. Because the triage desk was intact. Because nobody else had known what to do. Mara lowered her voice again, back to her usual level. "He needs a medical evaluation. Now." And in that moment, without any speech, without any announcement, The room understood something it could not name. The student nurse had just done what security could not do. With restraint, with control, with no escalation. For a moment, the ER did what it always did after a shock. It tried to pretend it was normal again. The attacker lay on his side, wrists controlled, chest rising too fast. One security guard hovered at his shoulders like he wanted to prove something. The other kept glancing toward the waiting room, as if looking for a second problem to appear. Mara stayed, kneeling beside the man, not on him. Close enough to control, far enough to keep him breathing. Pull socks, she said again, quieter now, back to clinical volume. Now. A tech appeared with the clip trembling between two fingers. He looked at Mara's badge, then at the man's blood-smeared hands. Where do you want it? He asked. Finger, Mara said. Index if you can. If he fights it, toe. The tech blinked, absorbing the specificity. He slid in carefully, clipped it to the man's finger, and backed away like he was leaving a cage. The reading struggled, then stabilized. Numbers flashed. Mara read them once, and kept her face still. Calder stood at the triage desk with the phone still in her hand, emergency operator on speaker. She did not look away from Mara when she spoke. Yes, Calder said. One male. Violent. He is restrained. We need police and EMS. Mara cut in without raising her voice. Tell them he is restrained, breathing fast, possible intoxication. Tell them we need a unit to clear the waiting room entrance. Calder's eyes widened at the precision, but she repeated it, almost word for word, as if it came from a protocol she had misplaced. The attacker made a low sound, a growl that might have been pain or anger. His shoulder muscles flexed. The guard nearest his head tightened his grip. Mara's hand lifted, 2 fingers a small signal. Do not squeeze, she said. Hold position. If you apply pain, he will fight pain. The guard's jaw clenched. He almost hit Staff. I saw, Mara said. Hold. The guard hesitated. Then, because her tone left no space for argument, he loosened by a fraction. Mara watched the attacker's breathing. Too fast. Shallow. His eyes were open but unfocused, tracking motion like a threat response rather than seeing people. She leaned in, not to comfort him, just to manage the next 10 seconds. You can hear me, she said low. Do not move. Breathe slower. His lips peeled back. Where is he? Mara did not ask who. Questions. Invited stories. Stories invited escalation. You're in the hospital, she said. There is no him in front of you. There are patients. He jerked once, testing the hold. The security guard stiffened. Mara shifted her knee again, anchoring his upper arm with weight, not pressure, then released it slightly when his body stopped pushing. Give and take. Not domination. Control. The waiting room had turned into a semicircle of faces held at a distance by fear. People were filming now. A woman whispered into her phone, describing the scene as if narration could protect her from it. A man in a hoodie stared at Mara like she had done something wrong by not letting the guards hurt him. Calder noticed too. Everybody sit down, she called, voice strained. Please sit down. Nobody listened. Mara understood the problem. The attacker was not the only threat. Panic was. She rose slowly, keeping one hand hovering near the attacker's shoulder, ready to drop back down if he surged. She did not step toward the crowd like a leader. She moved like a nurse, adjusting flow. She approached the closest bystanders with her clipboard held upright, a prop of normalcy. I need space, she said, calm and firm. Step back behind the line on the floor. There was no line, but people looked down anyway. When they did, she pointed with the tip of her pen to a seam between tiles, the kind of invisible boundary people accepted because they wanted something to obey. Behind that, she said, 2 people moved back. Then a third. A mother pulled her child closer to her chest. Mara kept her voice even. If you're filming, stop. If you cannot stop, move to the far wall. A man scoffed. Who are you? Mara looked at him once. Not hard. Not pleading. Just enough eye contact to make him feel seen. Someone trying to keep this from getting worse, she said. It was not a speech. It was a statement of fact. The man's mouth opened. Then he shut it. He stepped back a half step, as if he had felt something in her that did not match the badge. Mara turned away before he could decide to test her. She moved to the teenager from earlier, the one who had warned her. He was still there, pale, hands shaking. Behind the desk, Mara said to him. He nodded quickly and slipped through the staff access gap without being told twice. Calder caught Mara's sleeve as she passed. Police are 5 minutes out, she whispered. Maybe more. Mara's eyes went to the doors again. 5 minutes was a long time in a crowded room, with one unstable man on the floor and 100 scared people watching. Okay, Mara said. Calder searched her face. What are you thinking? Mara did not answer with what she was thinking. She answered with what needed doing. Clear the lane, Mara said. If he surges again, we need room. Move the frail patients deeper. Close the curtain bays. Calder swallowed. I can't just... Mara's gaze flicked toward Bay 4, where the child with asthma was now receiving a nebulizer but still looked tight in the chest, eyes wide with fear. The mother stared toward the waiting room, frozen. You can, Mara said quietly, because they cannot move fast. That landed. Calder turned and started issuing instructions to staff, short, clipped, practical, finally using her authority. Mara returned to the attacker. The pulse ox beeped steadily now, but the numbers were still not good enough to ignore. His skin looked flushed, sweaty, overstimulated. He was not calming. He was cycling. The guard whispered, Should we cuff him behind his back? Mara shook her head once. If you force his arms behind him, you restrict his chest. You will make his breathing worse. Front restraint until EMS arrives. The guard stared. You know that like for real. Mara did not respond. She knelt again, close, controlled. The attacker's gaze snapped to her. You think you're in charge. Mara watched his pupils, watched the tremor in his jaw. I think you're in trouble, she said. Medical trouble. Stop fighting it. His breath hitched, as if the word medical almost made sense. A distant siren finally threaded into the building, muted by walls. The attacker heard it too. His muscles tightened. His eyes widened. The animal part of him recognizing consequences. He surged, not wildly, strategically, pushing up with his hips, trying to roll, trying to get a knee under him. The guard panicked and yanked. Mara's hand shot out, caught the guard's wrist. Hold the line, she said, voice still low. Do not pull. Anchor. She placed her body where it needed to be, not heroic, not dramatic, just correct. She used his movement against him again, redirecting the roll into the floor, pinning the shoulder without compressing the chest. The attacker grunted, furious, trapped again. Mara leaned in, close enough that her words were private. Stay down, she said. This ends clean if you let it. Her tone carried something the room could feel even if they could not name it. Not fear. Not anger. Authority that did not need a uniform. The siren grew louder, and Mara held the line until help arrived. Not by escalating, but by refusing to. The siren outside did not bring relief. It brought attention. The attacker heard it and started breathing like a man, trying to outrun handcuffs with his lungs. His eyes went wide and bright, scanning the waiting room again, searching for angles, weaknesses, anyone he could use as a door. The crowd felt it too. The sound changed the room's posture. People stood. People backed up. People leaned forward to see, as if proximity would make them safer. Phones rose higher. A woman near the wall whispered, "It is on video," like that meant it would be controlled. Mara stayed low beside the attacker, one hand hovering near his shoulder line, the other ready to catch the next surge before it became a pile-on. "Do not move," she told him, tone flat. "You will get hurt." He spat, not words, breath and anger. His wrist strained against the guard's hold. The second guard's face tightened with humiliation. He wanted to win. Mara saw his fingers start to dig in to apply pain. She touched his forearm lightly, 2 fingers precise. "Hold," she said. "If you escalate, he escalates." The guard's eyes flashed at her. "He is bleeding on the floor." "He did this." "He is still a patient," Mara answered. "No words, no judgment, just policy spoken like fact." The guard looked away, jaw working, but his grip loosened a fraction. Across the room, the asthma child's nebulizer hissed. The mother sat rigid, eyes locked on the man on the floor. The child tried to watch too, even through his fear, because children always watch danger. Mara did not like it. Not because it was messy, because it was formative. Calder pushed through the semicircle of onlookers, voice raised now. Everybody back. Back up. Give us room. Someone shouted. He had blood on him. Another voice, older, bitter, answered good. Let the cops take him. The words hit the air and stayed there. Mara felt them settle into the staff as well. A nurse nearby, too, stared at the attacker with a hard expression, not fear anymore. Something colder. Mara understood. People who worked here carried a private ledger of harm. They did not have the luxury of neutrality. They were tired of being targets. But tired people made mistakes. The automatic doors opened again, paramedics first, then a uniformed police officer right behind them. The officer took in the scene in one sweep. The man on the floor, the guards holding him, the crowd filming, the triage desk as the center of gravity. His hand went near his holster without fully committing. Everybody step back, he called. Now. Some obeyed because of the uniform. Some did not. The officer's eyes landed on Mara's badge, then on her hands, then on the attacker's position, controlled, airway clear, limbs pinned in a way that looked deliberate. He frowned, not suspicious, just recalibrating. What happened? He asked Calder. Calder started to answer, but the words came out tangled. Too many details, too much adrenaline. He came in. He was aggressive. The officer turned to Mara. Mom, who are you? Mara did not stand taller. She stayed where she was, because moving would change the attacker's calculations. Student nurse, she said. He entered agitated. He attempted to breach the triage desk. We restrained him without compressing his airway. The officer blinked at the language. It was the kind of sentence people learned in training, not on their first rotation. You restrained him? The officer asked. Mara met his eyes once, calm, brief, then looked back at the attacker's hands. I initiated. Security assisted. The officer's gaze flicked to the security guards. They looked relieved to have police here, but also embarrassed. Any weapons? The officer asked. Unknown, Mara said. He has blood on his hands that appears not his. His right knuckles are split. Check waistband carefully. The officer's shoulders shifted subtly. He adjusted his approach without acknowledging it, turning his body slightly sideways the way people did when they had been taught to. He nodded once. Good. It was a small word, but it carried weight. The attacker chose that moment to twist again, try to roll his torso and get a knee under him. The crowd surged backward, a wave of bodies creating a choke point at the entrance. A wheelchair scraped. Someone tripped over a bag. A baby started screaming. The ER became a trap. Mara saw the problem before it fully formed. If the attacker broke free now, there would be nowhere to retreat. Patients would fall. The officer would go hands-on. A weapon might appear. Somebody would get hurt badly. Staff, patient, attacker, officer. It would not be clean anymore. The paramedic stepped in with soft restraints, moving fast. We need to sedate him, he said under his breath, eyes on the attacker's frantic breathing. He's going to crash or fight until he drops. A nurse nearby said sharply, Do it. Do it now. Mara's brain ran the options in silence. Sedation could end the physical struggle. It could also end breathing if done wrong in a crowded hallway with adrenaline, unknown substances, unknown medical history. The paramedic looked at Mara without realizing it, as if the room had already chosen who the center was. The officer waited too, eyes tight, because if sedation failed, his next step would be force. Mara watched the attacker's face, sweat, rage, confusion. She saw something underneath it. Fear sharpened into violence. She made the tactical shift quietly, the way she had moved furniture earlier. Clear the entrance, she told Calder. Move the fragile patients deeper. Shut the inner doors if you can. Calder started to protest, then saw the crowd bottleneck and swallowed it. She pivoted and began moving people with staff, using gurneys and carts as barriers, creating lanes the ER didn't naturally have. Mara spoke to the paramedic, low and controlled. Before you medicate, assess his breathing and pupils. We need oxygen on him. Keep him on his side. No prone. The paramedic nodded, already pulling a mask from his kit. The officer leaned closer, voice rougher now. Are you telling me how to do my job? Mara did not look up. I'm telling you how to keep him alive while you do it. The officer held her gaze for half a second. Then he looked away, as if accepting the point without granting the victory. The attacker surged again, harder, his strength spiking in a final, desperate attempt to stand. One of the guards reacted wrong, instinct taking over. He shifted his knee toward the attacker's back. Mara's hand snapped out and blocked the movement. "No," she said. One word. Cold. Absolute. The guard froze. In that tight second, the ER saw it. She was not asking. She was preventing a disaster. The paramedic got the oxygen mask on. The attacker fought it for a beat, then took a breath he did not mean to take. The room changed. Not calm yet, but controlled again. Outside, more sirens approached. Inside, cameras kept recording. Patients kept watching. Staff kept breathing around anger. And Mara stayed kneeling beside the man who had brought blood into their waiting room, holding the line between restraint and cruelty. Because once that line was crossed, it could not be uncrossed. The oxygen mask fogged with each breath the attacker took, fast and uneven. His chest rose like it was trying to climb out of his own ribs. The pulse oximeter beeped in a steady, indifferent cadence that did not match the room's fear. 2 police officers were here now. 3. Their presence pressed the air tighter. The waiting room had been pushed back, but it was still full of eyes. Full of phones. Full of people who wanted a simple ending. Mara stayed on one knee beside the man, a hand near his shoulder line, the other hovering close to his wrists, close enough to intervene, far enough not to look like she was punishing him. The paramedic leaned in, voice low. "He's in a bad place. If this is stimulants, he could go hyperthermic, arrhythmia, seizure. If it's something else, sedation can drop him." A nurse behind the paramedic muttered, not trying to be heard and failing anyway. "Let him drop." Mara did not react outwardly, but something tightened behind her eyes. The attacker strained again, not to stand now, but to twist his head to see the officers. His gaze locked onto a badge, then snapped away as if it burnt. One officer, young, tense, said, "We can cuff him and move him out." Now, security nodded too quickly, grateful for permission to stop thinking. Mara watched the attacker's lips. They were dry, cracked. His tongue darted out once like a man dehydrated and overheated. Sweat poured from his hairline. The skin on his neck was flushed and blotchy. This was not just anger. This was physiology. If they forced him prone, if they stacked bodies on him, if they cranked his arms behind his back, he could stop breathing. Not in a dramatic way. In a quiet, preventable way that would be recorded from 12 angles and dissected for years. Calder stepped in close, voice shaking with authority she was forcing into existence. "We need him off the floor. This is my waiting room." Mara looked up at her for the first time in minutes. "If you move him wrong, he dies in your waiting room." Calder went still. The older officer, a sergeant by the stripes, studied Mara's face like he was matching it to something. "You're a student?" Mara's eyes went back to the attacker's hands. "That's what the badge says." The sergeant's mouth tightened. "We have a report. Assault in the street. Possible robbery. People hurt." "I see the blood," Mara said. "Right now I'm treating what's in front of me." The young officer's patience snapped. "He's a suspect." Mara did not argue that point. She simply stated a different one. "He's also not oxygenating well, and he's overheating," she said. "If you want answers later, you keep him alive now." The paramedic nodded once, grateful someone had named the reality. Mara turned her attention back to the man's face. His eyes were wet, furious, and, underneath, lost. He kept whispering fragments. "Where is he? Where is he?" Mara made herself smaller in her posture, not submissive, strategic. A lower profile reduced threat perception. "What's his name?" she asked softly to the paramedic. "ID came in with him," the paramedic said, flipping a wallet with gloved hands. "Darius Klein." Mara didn't repeat the name aloud. Names could be hooks. The wrong hook could pull him back into violence. Instead, she said, "Darius, listen to me." His eyes snapped toward her voice, startled by recognition. Mara kept her tone level. "You're in a hospital. Your breathing is too fast. If you keep fighting, your heart can fail. Do you understand me?" For the first time, his gaze steadied. Not calm, but focused. A flicker of comprehension. Then his jaw clenched again, and the panic surged back like a tide. He jerked his wrists hard, testing the holds, trying to sit up. One security guard reacted with instinct and anger, pushing him back down. Mara caught the guard's forearm with her hand, firm, controlled. "Stop," she said not loud. "Final." The guard glared. "He's fighting." "Yes," Mara answered. "Because he's terrified and overheated. Do not punish him for physiology." The words landed wrong to people who wanted morality, who wanted good and bad. Calder's voice went sharp. "Mara, we have patients watching this. Children." Mara's eyes flicked toward the asthma child again. The boy's mask still hissed. His mother's arms were around him like a shield, but her gaze was fixed on Mara now, pleading without words for the room to stay safe. Mara nodded once. "Then we do it clean." She turned to the paramedic. "I want chemical restraint, but controlled. Lowest effective dose. Monitor airway continuously. Get temperature now. Get 4 access if he allows it. If not, we don't escalate with needles in this space." The paramedic hesitated. "Police will want cuffs." Mara looked at the sergeant. Her voice stayed respectful, but did not bend. "If you cuff him behind his back and force him prone, you increase the chance of respiratory compromise," she said. "If he dies, this becomes a death in custody in an ER, in front of witnesses." Silence spread outward, thin and sharp. The sergeant exhaled. "What do you recommend?" Mara felt the eyes on her: staff, police, security, patients. A student, nurse being asked to recommend policy in a crisis. This was the moral tension, the real one. Protect the room by handing him over to force, or protect life by slowing everything down when everyone wanted speed. Mara chose life. "Front restraints," she said. "Seated position as soon as he can tolerate it. Oxygen on. Temperature checked. For if safe. Medicate to reduce agitation, not to knock him out. We move him to a bay with doors and space. One officer stays. One stays outside. No crowding." The young officer scoffed under his breath. "This is ridiculous." Mara did not look at him. She looked at the attacker's face. "Darius," she said again, close enough that her voice was for him alone. "If you stop fighting, I can help you breathe. If you fight, they will hurt you. I do not want that." His eyes flicked to the officers, then back to Mara. He shook once, almost a shiver. His breathing hitched. For a second, his hands stopped straining. The paramedic moved fast in that opening, sliding a thermometer into place, reading the number and going tight-faced. "Hi," he murmured. "He's cooking." Mara felt a familiar, cold certainty settle into her bones. This was the edge where people died because everyone made it about control instead of care. A nurse behind her said, voice bitter, "After what he did, why should we?" Mara's answer was quiet, and it cost her something to say it in this room. "Because we are not a court," she said. "We're a hospital." She signaled the paramedic with 2 fingers. He prepared the medication. The sergeant watched Mara for a long moment. Then he spoke, low enough that only she heard. "You're very composed for a student." Mara kept her eyes on the attacker. "I've been around worse rooms." It was the closest thing to a reveal she allowed herself. The medication went in carefully controlled. The attacker fought for a moment, then his muscles softened by degrees, not collapsing, not vanishing, just losing the sharpest edge. Mara stayed with him through it, monitoring his breathing, watching the subtle shifts that meant he was still here. The crowd's anger did not disappear. It only quieted, confused by a choice that did not match their need for punishment. And Mara felt the cost of it in her own body, the awareness that if anything went wrong. Now, if he stopped breathing, if he surged again, if an officer decided to override her, she would be the one blamed first. A student, an easy scapegoat. She accepted that risk without moving her face, because the moral choice was not about what he deserved. It was about what the room would become if she let cruelty do the job for her. The medication did not erase the attacker. It only softened the sharpest edges of him, like taking a blade out of a man's hand without taking the hand. Mara stayed close as the paramedics and guards moved him, slow, coordinated, into an open bay with solid walls and a curtain that could be pulled if needed. Police held the perimeter, but the sergeant kept his officers back from crowding. Not because he trusted Darius, because he had watched what crowding did. Inside the bay, the oxygen hissed. The monitor leads were placed. The pulse oximeter beep returned to a steadier rhythm. The waiting room noise filled the hallway again, but now it had a different texture. Anger with nowhere to go, fear looking for someone to blame. Calder exhaled like she had been holding her breath for an hour. "Go wash up," she told Mara, voice rough. "You're covered in." Mara glanced down. There was blood on her knee and forearm, streaked across her scrubs where she had stabilized his descent. It looked worse than it was. It would look even worse on video. "I'll wash after vitals," Mara said. Calder's eyes narrowed. "You don't have to prove." "I'm not proving," Mara answered, and returned to the bay. Darius lay on his side, restrained in front, not tight, secure. His eyes moved slowly now, still searching, but with less violence in the search. He swallowed hard and whispered again, weaker. "Where is he?" Mara checked his temperature and read it once. "Still high." She spoke to the paramedic in short phrases. "Cool packs, fluids if possible, monitoring for sudden drop. No speeches, no hiroton, only steps." The young officer stepped into the bay, impatient. "We need to question him." The sergeant followed behind him and stopped at the threshold, one hand lifted to halt the younger man's momentum. Mara did not look up. "Not yet," she said. "He's not stable. If you push him, he surges." The young officer's face tightened. "You're a student nurse." Mara finally met his eyes, calm, flat. "Then treat me like one and listen to the part about physiology." The sergeant's gaze stayed on Mara a moment longer than necessary. Then he turned to the younger officer. "Back out," the sergeant said. "We'll wait." The younger officer looked like he wanted to argue. The sergeant didn't give him space. Outside the bay, the hallway shifted as staff resumed movement. The asthma child was being moved deeper into the unit. The mother held his hand so tightly his fingers were white. When she passed Mara, she didn't stop. She only looked at her. A look that said, "Thank you for not letting this become something my son remembers as violence." Mara felt it hit her harder than any praise would have. Back inside, Darius's breathing changed again. One quick hitch, then another. His eyes widened, panic trying to reform. He pulled against the restraints, not fully awake, not fully coherent, caught between fear and chemical slowing. Security leaned in instinctively. Mara lifted a hand. "No, give him room." They hesitated. Darius jerked his torso, trying to sit. The restraints held, but the movement made his oxygen mask shift. The monitor alarm chirped. The young officer, still in the hall, saw the motion and reached for his cuffs, as if the answer to movement was metal. Mara moved in one step. Not takedown this time. Not force. She placed 2 fingers on Darius's wrist, pressure in the right place, and guided his arm back down. She adjusted the oxygen mask, secured the strap, then set her palm lightly against his shoulder. Not pinning, grounding. "Stay," she said low. Darius's eyes locked onto hers. For a second, the huge body on the bed looked smaller, not weak, but human. His lips trembled. I didn't." Mara did not ask for confession. She did not give him absolution. "Breathe," she said. Slow. His chest rose. Fell. Rose again, a fraction less frantic. The crisis ended the way the best crises ended in a hospital. Not with victory, with stabilization. When the immediate danger had passed, the room tried to assign meaning. Calder approached the sergeant at the nurse's station, voice still shaking. Mara. She kept everyone safe." The sergeant nodded, eyes following Mara as she wrote notes with a steady hand, documenting times, vitals, behaviors, everything that would matter later, everything that would protect the staff and, unwillingly, protect Darius too. "She did," the sergeant said. Calder swallowed. "What is she?" "She's not." The sergeant didn't answer directly. He only said, quiet enough that it wouldn't travel, "People don't move like that unless someone taught them." Mara finished the note. She capped her pen. She walked to the sink and washed the blood from her forearms with cold water, methodical, thorough, as if cleaning a wound. No one clapped. No one made a scene. A nurse called for help with enforced start in Bay 6. A monitor alarmed in Bay 3. The printer jammed again. Mara dried her hands, returned to the triage desk, and picked up the next clipboard. Calder watched her, softer now. You okay? Mara looked once at the glass doors. Night still pressed against them, waiting for the next thing. I'm fine, she said. Then, with the same restrained calm she'd had all night, she spoke to the next patient in line. Name and date of birth.